Journalists do get one perk not afforded to the general public: press credentials, providing special access to closed events. In the old days, getting credentialed was pretty straightforward. Your news editor signed a form, and that was that. But in today's fragmented media world, that process is leaving out a whole lot of folks who do journalism. Who gets a press pass? That's the question posed by Harvard's Digital Media Law Project in a new survey of how journalists get credentialed. The answer? It depends. While only 20% of all journalists report being denied a credential in the past 5 years, it was more than twice as likely to be an independent journalist, freelancers, photographers, and self-described activists. In today's digital media landscape, that's a large circle of folks. People like Glenn Greenwald or Ezra Klein, or more locally, the guys behind Blue Mask Group or Universal Hub's Adam Gaffin. So when it comes to credentials, being on the cutting edge of journalism doesn't necessarily get you in. Well, they should just do what we do, make your own. No. But they're talking about press passes to things like, the Democratic Convention or, a funeral, something, that you really have to apply something for in advance. I mean, they got to cut it off somewhere. The Red Sox give out a limited number every year. They give out a limited number, certainly for the postseason games. I mean, you'd be filling some of these places with, as it is, the conventions have thousands and thousands. They got too many, but it is complicated because you can't just hang out a shingle and be a reporter. In my mind,
I think the they is the issue for me. Like who determines who they is?
I know.
I mean that's pretty much it. Listen, there's some people I don't think should be in the pool, but that's not my business. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think we have to have a broader definition and understanding of who should be allowed access to these things to cover it. And what you all did in the study, Josh, some of those questions were ridiculous. I have to say, to prove that you have credentials.
Yeah, I should note that Neiman Journalism Lab is one of the organizations that helped put this together.
Would you guys qualify for a credential? There you go.
It's a good question.
I don't see why.
We're at a university. A lot of people say if you're at a university, then you're not a real news institution. I have a lot of sympathy for news organizations, for government institutions who are mostly the folks we're talking about, although private businesses play in as well. The government institutions can't just let everyone in. They can't just let everyone have a press badge. They have to have some sort of standard. The unfortunate thing is that the standards have been tied to things like, do you work for a newspaper or do you not work for a newspaper? Do you work full-time for an established news organization, or are you a freelancer? And those standards might have made sense at some past time, although you could question that. They clearly don't make sense today at a time when the news landscape is so much more fluid. From talking to people who have been on the other side of this, I do know that one of the big concerns is you don't want to open up, have a rule that allows interested parties who are activists, who are lobby groups, for example, to be able to create a news organization that lets their people get press access. They say if the NRA starts a newsletter, does the NRA suddenly have press access in the same sort of way? There are legitimate concerns on all sides of that. I just think that it's a completely under-regulated space. Every agency comes up with their own set of rules in every city, in every town, in every state. And broadly speaking, there needs to be education that the people who you're denying might be exactly the right people to be at the press conference, in the press room.
Exactly. And the activist argument is what has led to one of the most absurd situations out there, which is that SCOTUS blog, which does such a great job of covering the Supreme Court, can't get a credential to cover the Supreme Court because its publisher, Tom Goldstein, is also a lawyer who appears before the court sometimes.
Wow.
And yet they do terrific work.
Well, that is a conflict.
Well, yes, it is a conflict, but he's...
but somebody else could get a credential, no?
Well, their lead reporter, Lionel Denniston, actually has a credential through a radio station that he's affiliated with. But a lot of these rules don't make sense anymore, and yet the problem that we're talking about is a limited number of seats. They have to be given to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, a Whitey trial, that was a real juggle.
Yeah.
I mean, because once you got a seat, you had to show up every day.
Exactly.
So it was like, so we even had to commit to that, but it was a very small number of people that actually got into that courtroom.
And I think the whole point about the photographers uniformly being turned away is a real problem. Yeah.
And look at what the White House has been doing with photographers.
Exactly.
So never mind putting cameras in federal courts. Always got to get that.